It's the 17th of August 2022. I'm Dana Durnford. I'm also known as the nuclear proctologist.org. Always takes a couple moments to get up to bash and speed. Stop size we'll see. Is United Kingdom future nuclear plant they're going to build. You can see it's surrounded by farms. And so that poisons the food. They build almost all nuclear plants worldwide are surrounded by farms, typically as far as you can see. And that if you go to the edge of the farmland, you can barely see the nuclear plant in the distance. There's so much evil in the world. Welcome to the little speck of good. StopSizewellC.org. It's thank goodness there's people like that out there. Fukushima is like eating a banana, walking in sunshine, flying on an airplane. So, or climbing a mountain, or sleeping next to somebody, or 15 minutes in a kayak, or 20 days in New York, and it goes on and on and on of natural stuff that's harmless, completely harmless. And so they've been doing this for almost 80 years, brainwashing the public with the same lie over and over, very soothing to keep hearing the same lie generation. Fukushima radioactive fallout, by the way, is global warming. This is one of the radioactive fallout dispersal models was based on venting, not based on the actual nuclear meltdown. So these invisible, think of if you had a snowstorm covering the planet at the same time and didn't go away for 1 million years. It didn't melt for 1 million years. Well, this is radiation. It covers the planet, doesn't go away for 1 million years, but you can't see it or smell it or taste it or hear it or feel it or pick it up or throw rocks at it. It's like it, but it's pulsing energy almost at the speed of light. Now, all fuel pools, all nuclear power plants, reactors have what's known as fuel pools where they store decades of reactor cores. They're still split in the atom. And so with 440 nuclear power plants, reactors rather, worldwide, all the fuel pools are doing similar all day, every day. It's just shocking what... Now, Fukushima lost its inventories of multiple reactors and decades of it. The deception is so huge, the average person can't possibly figure it out on their own, unfortunately. It's not that people are stupid, it's just that the industry has made sure it's very difficult for the average person to understand it. And this is hopefully where I come in. They claim they got 1,000 tanks. They had 1,000 tanks of radioactive water in 2013, by the way. Do you still have 1,000 tanks today? How many tanks did you fill up in 9 years again? None, right? That's the right answer. Now, the reality of it was the tanks were built to trick you, manipulate you, and deceive you into thinking they didn't contaminate the Pacific Ocean, because most people have no concept what a nuclear accident means, right? And so the harm was extremely brutal to the planet, not just the Pacific Ocean, unfortunately. And as you can see, the plume covering the planet, all the oceans are immediately covered, all your farms. But ground zero is going to be extraordinary, obviously, which is Japan. The country is actually ground zero, see? 55 countries banned the food from 14 prefectures for over a decade. Except for Canada, of course. Canada lifted all restrictions after 93 days. And because 55 countries won't take the food from 14 prefectures, not just Fukushima, Canada was poisoned because they were the only one who would take the radioactive food. Canada took it willingly after 93 days, while the reactors were still just violently erupting radiation. Canada lifted all restrictions on the entire country. No, won't check anything. International Atomic Energy Agency, which was built as a controlled opposition by the United Nations, which is 195 militaries. Which is 195 militaries. Where did that go tonight? What Eisenhower had warned you about. I didn't import it. That'll teach me. Eisenhower had warned you about the military-industrial complex and how prolific of a disaster, destruction machine it actually was. And so the military-industrial complex is United Nations and NATO. In fact, if you look up NATO, it's 30 militaries. Just what it'll tell you. So that brings us to the night. Let me put this in there. That brings us to the night. So there was one story there where they show you that picture of to your left. That's a fake Chernobyl picture. There allegedly somebody stood right alongside the melted reactor core, crouched down, taking a even more stupider is taking a picture, because you can't do that, and somebody else had to take that picture to get that picture, right? So what they done was they took this. Now think about Chernobyl was a 200-ton reactor. That's a handrail right there. Do you think that's a 200-ton reactor core right there? Of course it's not, right? So what they done was they darkened the picture. They inserted, in this case that's actually me, they inserted a picture and pretended they were taking more pictures at the reactor core. And so I went there at the same time and he wasn't there. They put that picture in after, because that's not true either, see? It's a fake one. And the media got a tendency to use that picture lately because they're trying to promote the disease factory known as nuclear power worldwide. And so what I do when I'm bored is I go through the entire 24-hour news cycle of nuclear. And I'll pick out the stupid, because you can't keep up with it, the most stupid lies of the day, and I'll try to cover that each night, 5 nights a week, among many other things. We also do research expeditions, 4 to 5 months on the ocean when they're coming home type expeditions. Anyway, let's get at it. Yuck. Here we go. Highly toxic. Oh, we got a poll tonight. A little slow there tonight. Hi, everybody. We're clipping along at 20 votes. Should Japan's... Because Japan is shipping deadly food from a nuclear wasteland. Should that be considered a war against humanity? And we got a rock solid 20 votes. It's actually worse. It's worse than that. Here, let me show you. At some places, they're actually harvesting food right alongside the 1-ton bags of radiation. I know you're like, no, Dana, you photoshopped that. And honestly, I didn't know. So Japan, we covered this a little bit last night. Japan is shipping radioactive waste, and we still did, and they do this sometimes where they don't give you the skinny on what's actually going on. So sometime in a week we should be able to figure that out. Germany to keep last 3 nuclear power plants running. Wall Street Journal, of course. And they show you, this is a Germany plant, nuclear power plant. So they show you that little picture. I went and blowed it up. But actually, if you look up that same nuclear power plant, what you see is it's surrounded by farms. It's always hemorrhaging radiation. All the farms now have been poisoned constantly for probably 35 or 40 years, murdering people with that food. By the way, Germany says they're undecided about nuclear power plants. Scumbag Wall Street Journal. Sorry, Scumbag Wall Street Journal. France demands withdrawal of Russian forces from Ukraine's nuclear power plant. Wow. Wow. I'll get there. Just got to keep clicking until it looks proper. France demands withdrawal of Russian forces. Or what? You going to go down and bomb them? Nuclear waste recycling startup wants to solve the ball and chain problem holding back nuclear. We covered this company before. They're trying to raise money, obviously. And that was, we covered this guy quite a lot of times over the years. Ed McGuinness knows firsthand, he says, about nuclear waste in the United States, because he worked for the Department of Energy from 1991 to 2021. In January, he went, because he was working as a lobbyist with the Department of Energy for the industry, joined a Curio, nuclear innovation startup, to become its CEO, because he got the perfect contacts in the government. And then he got an instant interview with CNBC. But the plans to solve the nuclear waste problem. He's going to make mixed oxide fuel out of it. They want to take ownership of all of it. Just make mixed oxide fuel. But that whole process, you release so much radiation into the environment. That's why most countries banned it. It's because it's evil. If you look at La Hague in France and Sellafield and Degenerate in the United Kingdom, you start coming to the realization. Typically, now we see quite a lot of these startup companies come and go, fly by night, so to speak. And, do they really think that the Americans are just going to pass over all their high-level nuclear waste to a private company? It won't surprise me, to tell you the truth, because it's the nuclear industry, right? Molex here in Canada wants to do it, but they're actually from Britain. But again, they're funded by the government. The government created a shell company, gave Molex and what's the other one? I can't remember off the top of my head. $5 million each, and then closed the shell company. But since that, apparently they gave them close to $100 million. And they want to make small modular reactors in New Brunswick that run on mixed oxide fuel. The whole problem with the nuclear industry is there's nobody there that's sane. Everybody's actually crazy. The industry's got so many generations of lunatics, it's the new norm, right? Obsolete Optics is spamming me. So he's putting in a study about how scumbag scientists are using Fukushima isotopes as tracers. And this is a scumbag study, by the way. What are you doing to me, Obsolete? You've actually put that in there before, right? So, like, when you only acknowledge cesium-137, you're doing the devil's work, right? Like, how can you use that study when I've showed you the studies of 220 million atoms per liter of rainfall? Which makes that study look like the stupidest thing in human history. Because you can't have these numbers without massive numbers of Curium, which they won't acknowledge. And the cesium studies are meant to lead you away, right? The trace studies are meant to mock the harmfulness of the radiation. I don't know why you would do that. I don't understand that. That's what the industry does to fuck me over, right? Is put that stuff out there. That stuff is meant to make sure humanity and the species don't have a future, because people get diluted by the delusion of that study. The study is irrelevant for the documentation that we provide. It shows that as just cesium studies are done to brainwash the population. Don't forget to put in there Spider-Man and the Hulk endorsed that study for me. That's not a good study to be putting in there. And using tritium, talking about tritium on this site. You're going to make me do that, are you? There's a study for you that covers the oceans instantly, worldwide. The land, the forests, the farms, the trees. How about this study? How about this study of the Neptunium-239 dispersals? Covering the planet in radiation, and then the study you're putting in there is sending me backwards 10 years. I work like a dog to tell the truth, and you're going to put in shit studies. Thanks a lot, man. Thanks for the help. You're not helping, by the way. Startup called Curio. Reprocessing nuclear waste is one way to make it less radioactive. Now, of course, that's the incredible lie. Let's spread the radiation all over the world to make the fuel rods less radioactive. Because that's what reprocessing does. Like, we've heard this argument so many times that I can't handle it anymore. This nonsense, this lies, this deceit, this deception. The same propaganda generation after generation of the industry. You're going to have a pilot facility. Like, Sellafield's been doing it since 1957. You really think you're something new, do you? You think you're new, do you? You think you're new compared to what? The Degenerate, you can't clean that up for the next 300 years, they claim. Not that we'll be around to find out if that's accurate or not, but 300 years, that site, that community is radioactive. And it was surrounded by farms poisoning people. Oh, by the way, it's going to cost them $5 billion to build. It's a pretty good deal when it's going to cost $700 billion to clean up Hanford. which is probably what they already spent on it. We would take title of 86,000 metric tons of high-level nuclear fuel. These are what you call demons, eh? Gonna make mixed oxide fuel out of it. And the amount that they're releasing to the environment is just stunning. This is 2020, for goodness sakes. How can we have a future? Like originally the first 10 years, yeah, you made all kinds of mistakes. You didn't know what nuclear was going to do, and you didn't understand how splitting the atom was going to kill the planet. But that's when it should have stopped, right? Once a piece of shit, always a piece of shit, right? And we've covered that work of crap how many times? Turning trash into treasure. It's all splitting the atom, for God's sakes. You got to get it and stop it from splitting the atom into the environment. This is a perpetual disease factory, each of these fuel pools worldwide. That's all they do all day is hemorrhage radiation into the environment. These casts are all vented into the environment. We're going to lose the friggin' planet. Nuclear war will eliminate more than 5 billion people. So the USSR set off nuclear weapons that were equal to 3,800 Hiroshima's Nagasaki, because it was a plutonium bomb. 3,000 hydrogen on top of that. 3,800 Nagasaki bombs going off at the one time. That's a nuclear war. Of radioactive fallout on top of that. Plea deals upended for peer accused of peddling nuclear sub-secrets. The judge wouldn't take the plea deal. Rejected the plea bargain for trying to sell military secrets. Milestone reached at Darlington refurbishment is ahead of schedule. Anything from the World Nuclear News is from a nuclear lobbying group, and so it's going to be incredible propaganda every time. They're only there because the industry gotta have a public relation firm there because it's so friggin' evil. So every facet of the industry is evil. This is what World Nuclear News, World Nuclear Engineering websites, which are lobbying groups for the industry, right? And their job is to try to, well, not try to, is to manipulate you. And they control a lot of Hollywood. So the Canadian nuclear industry lifted all restrictions on the nuclear wasteland's food after 93 days. And so all that food shipped in poisoned everybody in the country, of course. It's truly, it's so evil that I don't have anything to compare it to. It's a biological weapon in your supermarkets in Canada because of the nuclear industry. And then it got $13 billion to refurbish Darlington shortly after the reactors melted down in Japan, just because they figured the population might turn against nuclear, so they appropriated the money to themselves. Their entire legacy is so disgusting and so despicable. It's humiliating that they exist on the planet. NANO Nuclear Energy awarded access to National Reactor Innovation Center. You know, the problem with the studies is nobody mentions the truth. That's why I get upset about the fake studies. They might acknowledge some radiation, but let me explain it to you. Because obviously, people got a short memory. I don't, but everybody else seems to have a really short memory. The radiation covered the planet with so much radiation, it threatens mass extinction. So if you do a study on the ocean, you can't just talk about radiation. You got to talk about the extinction. Because when I went out there with the documentation, the species are gone. But nobody acknowledges that. You can't just say there's radiation in the ocean. You got to, right? We've done this for 6 years. Back and forth to Alaska. And the species didn't come back. So if a study talks about radiation in the ocean and won't talk about how it wiped out all the species along Canada's coastline, for instance, and Alaska's coastlines, then what's the point of the study? You can postulate everything you want, but I went there and done the work. 4 to 5 months a year on the ocean without coming home. Year after year, abandoned many times, starving, no fuel, stuck in the middle of nowhere, no groceries, and still wouldn't come home. Wait for my pension to show up and head back out on the ocean. And covered the coastline year after year after year, the species didn't come back. Now I'm old and fucking broken, and I can't do it anymore. But we went out and done it when I wasn't even healthy on top of that. And the species are gone. They're gone. And it doesn't mean nothing to anybody for some reason. I don't understand that. The species are gone. That doesn't mean, that's not important. That's not fucking newsworthy. And I was attacked while I was on the ocean, criminal, because I was going to take pictures of the coastline and see how healthy it was. Because I know this coastline. I used to dive the entire coastline. The plume covered the coastline in the first 20 days. The species to your left, you'll never take that picture again. They're gone. These are authentic before and after pictures. And I done the whole coastline, year after year after year, in adverse conditions, being demonized and attacked and smeared while I was out there with no one to defend me, and let the evidence tell the truth. Let's put all the cards on the fucking table and let them fall, chips fall where they may. So I done the entire coastline looking for no aces. And it doesn't exist. The species are exterminated because of Fukushima's radioactive fallout. I know, because I went out there and sucked it up and suffered it. Me and my fearless sidekick.
Hey Zoe, a little too rough out there. Getting a few waves right here. I don't want to stay around here very long. You can see that fucker's out there breaking. Yeah, it's April 18th, second tide of the day. Looks like I'm gonna have to give up for this side. I'll shoot over to the other side. Yeah, a little big out there. That's pretty badass. That's not gonna work.
That's the most northerly point in Canada.
I want to do that shoreline. I guess I'll do that one. Gotta watch out for those guys sneaking in on me. Gotta watch out for those guys sneaking up on me. Haha. Oh yeah, that's badass. Anyway, we'll go somewhere else, Zoe. Let's go that direction, I guess. Looks a bit more nicer. Let's go over and do that shoreline anyway, Zoe. I got a couple of seals there. Probably can't see them, I guess. You see them bobbing anyway. Oh, they're gone. Yeah, let's go somewhere else, Zoe. We're almost to Egg Island up there. Seas are definitely building. It's Monday, the 15th. Fog is so thick you can't see a bloody thing. One of my tow lines is snapped. Still hanging on by but a big wave now between me and the skiff, and I'll break that one. That's the tow rope for the Zodiac. And see how the braid actually started to come undone, but stayed together. 4.3 miles per hour. Back and forth. 3.9 knots. 4.6 miles per hour, blah, blah, blah. Anyway. That's Calvert Island. The bottom of it, we're inside, no ground swells now, or they're calming down. We got the big sail up. And we got the mainsail up. I have to straighten up this one because it's taking some of the wind from the big one. Woo! So we're in behind Calvert Island. Got some shelter. It's 20 after 1 now. I dropped the spinnaker down a little bit, the pole, the whisker pole. We're getting 3.6 knots, 4 miles per hour. I was back and forth. You're towing the boat. Towing the boat with the wind behind you. Well, there's not a lot of wind. There we go. Now we're flying. Ooh, Safety Cove. It's right here, Safety Cove. And we're heading to Shearwater, about 55 miles. And we're making 2.7 miles per hour, wing on wing. There's a few little wind blows coming behind us, but this is probably the best we can hope for unless we start the engine up. And what's the point of having a sailboat if you keep starting the engine, I suppose?
They're all the size of your thumb, eh? They're the size of your thumb. So you can fill the beach up with people, but you're not going to find the species to your left. The Fukushima fallout has killed the species. They're permanently gone. Most of the phytoplankton is gone. This is why we see the mass die-offs. This model of France's radioactive fallout, that tells the story, unfortunately. The species to your left, this is typically you would break your neck trying to get ashore because there were so many species a lot of the times. It's slippery, right? They're permanently gone. They're exterminated because of Fukushima. Fukushima is an extinction event. And I know because I went up and done the research year after year after year. Not maybe, not perhaps, but year after year, 4 to 5 months on the ocean without coming home. And I can't pretend it never happened. And I work, unfortunately, all day, every day, trying to warn the world that, hey, you know, hello, we got an issue. It's a serious one. Deteriorating plant threatens mass extinction around the world. So these models all shows the same thing. The radioactive fallout. This model covers the planet in 16 days. And the problem with it is, if it's true, it threatens mass extinction around the world. So we went out, checked it out, and it's a mass extinction. The species are gone. These are before and after. You got to remember there's a 19-foot tide exchange here. And so to catch the exact tide exchange is never going to happen when you're doing it with pictures, right? But I went there and verified it year after year. Most of the coastline at low tide would look like that right there. That's a prime picture. In 2011, in January, that's what it looked like. Right? This is what it looked like to your left in January of 2011. But a few years later, the species are exterminated. So we went back year after year thinking that the ocean would just repopulate the coastline. It didn't. And so my site, like I can't remember how many pictures we took on these expeditions, 250,000 or something like that. That's an extinction event, see? So when the millions of migratory birds would fly along the coastline, they would just land on the beaches and feed, right? There would be 30,000 insects at the high tide line. This is a tropical rainforest. That's an extinction event. And I get really upset. I take it really personal that academics don't acknowledge this. Despite the fact that I have a site where I put all the documentation to with all the GPS's coordinates, and nobody has acknowledged me. So I refuse to go away and give up. And so 5 days a week, year after year, if I'm not out on the ocean or in the woods doing research expeditions, I'm here telling you the documentation and pushing back against the genocide, omnicide machine known as the nuclear industry. And I've sacrificed everything. My health included, everything. Every minute of every day is dedicated to showing up here every night at the same time, without fail, never early, never late, and working as hard as I can, doing the best I can, which is, unfortunately, it's an absurd amount of work to tell the 24-hour news cycle. I didn't realize that. But I want to challenge every lie that I can challenge each day, because nobody else will ever challenge that lie. And that's absurd. When there's no incentive not to be evil, then it gets out of control, right? And that's what's happened to the industry. There's no checks and balances. The International Atomic Energy Agency, the non-regulatory agencies, also known as the nuclear regulatory agencies, are all created as captured entities. You don't have any organization that can push back against the industry. And the planet needs a voice, unfortunately. There's a million people out there can do it better than I am, and can, but they won't do it. And so we are doing what our obligations as a human on this planet. We're obligated. This is our obligation. You have an obligation to make Earth's last stand, because this is Earth's last stand. There's no one to speak for these species anymore, and when people go there, they don't even know they're missing. And what? I've been demonized by around 1,600 medias for doing that. After coming ashore on a major expedition, I was arrested, so in the middle of the night, and given gag orders so I couldn't talk to the population about the cover-up. It's really something. But I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not a bad person for going out and beating the shit out of myself year after year. Too bad Greenpeace didn't do something like this, despite the fact that we reached out to them dozens of times. I've never stopped believing in humanity, that humanity will do the right thing. I've never given up hope. Day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, I've never given up hope. Because that's unthinkable. Another nuclear energy company is pleased to announce the company has been awarded 200 hours at Idaho National Laboratories, which is situated in one of the biggest aquifers in that part of the country, and is incredibly polluted. They actually got around $50 million spent on trying to clean up the aquifer, and you can't clean up the underground aquifer from nuclear intrusion, right? The nuclear contamination will never go away. This is a great story. How native land became a target for the nuclear waste disease factory. It's a fantastic story. It's very rare we can say that, isn't it? Only because they're the victims, see? The nuclear industry has taken advantage of the loose restrictions in the Native American land, jeopardizing its hundreds of thousands of lives. Native American reservations, which was Hanford, they got rid of two bands out of Hanford reservation site, which is 585 square miles, because they just made it radioactive. The history of Los Alamos and Idaho National Laboratories and Hanford waste sites and all the other Superfund sites is horrific. It's horrific that people could be that evil. So that's a great read. People should read that story. It's way too... It's so unusual to get so much documentation in a single story. And Dave dug up a lot of incredible work. People should go and read the whole thing. But the natives at all of these places, absurd amount of illnesses and diseases, and they were targeted. And we covered so many stories each year on this. It's just, yeah, everybody should go read that article, because that's a great article. This was crazy, where the nuclear industry was able to hide from environmental regulations and public opposition behind the shield of the tribal sovereignty. right, on the natives' land, right? It's so surreal that the industry can't come up with a solution for the problems on the cover-up. They're really good at their cover-up, but they can't come up for a solution. There's no incentive for the nuclear industry not to be evil. And so their children gets the education, gets the same job, and their parents were evil, so that's normal. But the problem is the next generation and the next generation are the entitled lots, and they're savages. What they're doing to the planet now is because nobody held their parents accountable, right? Which is why I've had polls saying, should nuclear scientists be sterilized, right, or not allowed to have children because we know what's going to happen, right? They'll kill the planet the first chance they get because inbreeding does that to people, right? Moldova ships in 1 million iodine tablets. And whoever wrote the story doesn't know nothing about the subject, unfortunately, and made some serious clumsy errors. But that's because of Russia and Ukraine. Now, the iodine's not going to help you unless you take it 24 hours before the accident. And there has to be enough radiation to justify taking the pill, because the pill can screw you up too, right? But you're still going to ingest the radiation, still going to sequester in your muscles, your organs, and your bones. You're still going to get sick and fucking die. But your thyroid glands are not going to be producing too much of the iodine hormones, but it's still going to suck up cesium, because cesium aggregates in your thyroid too, right? Just don't live within 100 miles of a nuclear power plant is the first rule. If you can hear the sirens at a nuclear power plant, you got to sell your house and move out of there. You are getting poisoned constantly. That's anywhere within 10 miles of a plant. That's a bad spot. Within 15 miles of a nuclear power plant, there's 6 times more breast cancer. So 1 million pills for 2.5 million people. Because the rich will just run away, see? Terrestrial Energy signs a memorandum of understandings with Invest Alberta. Remember, it's kind of like a promise ring in the nuclear industry. You promise to buy our small modular reactors when we get them, will you? It's Nuclear Engineering International. They'll never put their name on a story because, hey, that's a nuclear lobbyist, right? That's what it is. It's not a public relation firm. It's a nuclear lobbying group. Their job is to get rid of rules and regulations so the industry can be exceptionally evil. And so their articles are designed that way too. Terrestrial Energy, by the way, doesn't have a reactor, and ain't going to have one in the near future. So they're taking the money away from other energy industries that are much better by tying them up in something that don't exist. Well, we can't use renewables because we got a memorandum of understandings with terrestrial energy. Yeah, we love to have a wind farm, but we already got a contract with the terrestrial energy for small modular reactors. Yeah, when are they going to be ready? 14, 20 years or something. Maybe. For lucky. What are we going to do in the meantime? Well, it's tough luck. We got a memorandum of understanding. Nothing says stupid, man, like nuclear. The SOP nuclear power plant, what's left of it, located near Elma in Grays Harbor County. This is an abandoned nuclear power plant. Disease factory that never got finished. There's a lot of them out there, right? $2.25 billion scam. $2.25 billion for a bunch of cement. Nuclear industry is one great big Ponzi scam. It's a bit disturbing to see the massive cooling towers in the middle of a modern business park, because it got built up by a business park. This is a disgusting story. And it's KRQE, right? When WIP, the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant, had a meltdown, they come out and covered it up, right? And so I done a 1 hour video with all the documentation saying, look, that's a radioactive plume, for goodness sakes. And turns out we're right, of course. They chopped the video up and put it on TV and called me a conspiracy theorist. I said, well, the radioactive fallout is going to fall on your swings and farmland and your drinking water supplies and your communities. And what they done was they covered up. They said there was a truck fire, but they wouldn't go back down for 10 days. That sounds like a truck fire to me. In 55 football field-sized caverns. So 10 days later, they decide they're going to go back down. Oh, too bad. We had a radiation release in one of the other parts of the plant, or the repository. And so they said, no big deal, we'll sort that out. And $6 billion later, and all they showed us was a picture of the salt trucks. These are little tiny trucks, very, very low to the ground because they're digging tunnels. It's like a 1-ton pickup truck without the pickup on top of it. And the back tire caught fire, so they evacuated the site for 10 days. And then the smoke that was coming out of there wasn't no truck tire. That was radioactive fallout. They're calling the bus they got for the children the Einstein Express. Offering nuclear museum, and we covered this particular lot on a regular basis over the years. And they're in Albuquerque, New Mexico. You want the kids to be able to experience the nuclear museum. They're literally the brainwashing. That's all this is about, is brainwashing the school children. And the children down there will be good little nuclear waste plant workers in the future, I'm sure. Offering fall camps, nuclear museum. Also, they do like a babysitting for young kids. After school babysitting while the parents are working. Drop the children off at the nuclear museum, grow up to be nuclear scumbags. Hyundai, which is South Korea, engineering supports nuclear technology manpower development. Nuclear technology manpower development. So South Korea got a new president, new scumbag, and he's gonna, instead of getting rid of nuclear power like the last administration, he wants to promote it. But like when it comes to nuclear, you can't just like burn money and make it happen. It doesn't work that way. It's a long, slow, methodical process. Everybody got to get their cuts of the pie first, right? Sign a business agreement with KEPCO International Nuclear Graduate School, aka Kings, to nurture global nuclear scumbags. They're going to be out on TVs and radio shows. They're going to say, it's like a banana and a potato chip and walking in the sunshine. Getting on an airplane. Don't listen to Durnford Fairmonger. It's disgusting. Progress continues at Russia's experimental demonstration energy complex. Everybody's cutting Russia off for everything but their nuclear material. The small modular reactors don't work without Russia's fuel. It's hilarious, man. One great big happy family. War? What war? Demonstrate closed fuel cycle technology. ODEC will include 3 unique facilities: a module for fabrication, refabrication, uranium, plutonium, nuclear fuel. A mixed oxide fuel facility. Recycling irradiated fuel, aka mixed oxide. Oh yeah, look at that one here. Currently at the construction site, the installation of the exhaust pipe for a nuclear recycling site. Man, it's illegal in Canada because it's so evil. Their exhaust structure is 98 meters high because that's where the radiation lands off site. They'll surround that with farms right away. That's what they do, right? How long did our video get extended last night? I wonder. It was 1 hour, 58 minutes, and 4 seconds of covering the nuclear laws for a 24-hour cycle. It takes almost 2 hours if I don't stutter too much. I stutter a lot, unfortunately. That's life, right? Not much you can do when you're a stutterer, Dina. It's 1 hour 57:37. That can't be right. 1 hour 58 and 4. What? The video's longer? 37, 38, 39, 40. It's 23. So my video's 25 seconds shorter now. Normally it's 7 seconds longer. After 12 hours, my videos get longer. They're cutting stuff out of my videos? Wow. Because that's what it is currently. No. Last night. Yeah, 2 minutes after the show was over. It was 1:58:04. And right now it's 1:57:37. So there's 25 seconds taken off my video. Out of my video. They're gone crazy, eh? Every day, 12 hours after my video is posted, normally it's 7 seconds longer. You got to catch it live, folks. Condition met for German nuclear extension. No, Germany says they're undecided. There's a whole lot of stories. This was Euro, and this is Euro. Euro Observer and Euro News. They can't even get their stories straight anymore. So the world has never known a day quite like today. Walter Cronkite on his news program, CBS, 30th March 1979. After a severe accident at 3 Mile Island, Santa Susana was equal to 460 3 Mile Islands going off at the same time of radiation releases. There's never been a nuclear accident before that, but this was the first one people could follow on their living room TV screens. See, they tell you 3 Mile Island, pretend Santa Susana didn't happen. They had that since 1959. 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, Fukushima, and now the captured Russian plant. Explosion, graphite fire in 86 of Chernobyl, which was a new reactor, right? 2011, 3 reactors. There's actually 4, for God's sakes. How can people be that stupid not to include reactor 4? No offense, but how? How does that actually work? The final cost to clean up maybe $750 billion. There's going to be a lot more than that. There's going to be a hell of a lot more than that. In the last few months, starting to fire at Zaporizhzhia, who cares, nuclear plant in Ukraine. The biggest one in Europe. I don't speak Ukrainian, unfortunately. We might well witness one more of those days when radioactive materials will be expelled into the atmosphere and dispersed widely. Well, it doesn't just last for a day, it goes on for years and decades. Fukushima might not stop. Using it, Russia uses it as a human shield, right? So the older the plant, the more radioactive fuel is at the plant, which means all of it's splitting the atom into the environment 24 hours a day. TEPCO must be candid on plans to discharge tainted water into the ocean. Sure, they didn't stop. You can't call it tainted water at a nuclear meltdown. You can't filter water from a nuclear meltdown. You're pouring water over a reactor. 99% of it flows into the ocean. 1% is sucked up. That was the theory. And then you would test it to see how radioactive it was. But in 2015, they claimed they were sucking everything up. Everything was going into tanks. The Riva system for filtration, the ELP system for filtration, the Siri system which was supposed to be just removing cesium-137. None of these worked in 2000 up to 2014. Because if you're taking 2 sieverts an hour and putting it through a filter per liter, the filter is so radioactive after 10 or 20 minutes, you can't get near the filtration system. And so the whole world is thinking stupidly of what might happen instead of what did happen. Nobody, and I mean nobody, is talking about the real numbers, the real facts, the real documentation, the real emissions, the real inventories. And that should seem impossible, right? But when it comes to the nuclear industry, that's not impossible at all. You can't have a future pretending, right? And that's what they're doing. And because everybody else is dependent upon them and the species, it's just 3 blind mice and they're on a cliff ledge hanging on to each other. The central government, TEPCO, must spare no effort to explain the propaganda, the deceit and deception to the parties and the rest of the world. Like, it just doesn't seem real that we don't have any foundations out there trying to address the issues. You can't treat the water and remove the radioactive contents. There's videos in my playlist where I explain how all this, show you all the documentation, about the tanks that get you into that perspective. The non-regulatory agencies approved the plan last month, saying it's had no safety issues. Wait now, residual tritium from multiple nuclear meltdown sites. And they're talking about tritium. Every time I hear the word tritium, I want to kill somebody. Because you can't have a future pretending the issue is tritium. Why is that such a difficult part of the subject? Why is it that people can't understand that basic concept that I don't know, how do you describe something like that? It's like going down to the lottery center with a lottery ticket that didn't win and telling them that's the $1 million ticket, because you meant to get the numbers that won the lottery, and that's the numbers that you're supposed to have, but you didn't get them. Right? But he's going to say, well, no, that's fraud. You can't do that. And they're like, no, like, you're wrong. I thought the numbers, when the numbers were coming out, I thought those numbers. And therefore, I should be entitled to $1 million. And you say, no, you got to buy the ticket and have the numbers on the ticket before that, and then you can win $1 million if that's what it was worth. You're like, no, I thought it, and I want it, and I want it right now. That's the nuclear industry. And so their friends will say, well, yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Here's everything that the Canadians got. Take that and try to fix nuclear. It's like going out and there's a car coming at you down the highway, and you're going to put your hand out and stop the car, and the car is going to crumble all around you, and you're going to be perfectly fine and walk away. That's the nuclear industry. That's how they think. Because that actually makes sense compared to the nuclear industry. To put residual tritium in the treated waters released into the sea by an active nuclear power station in and outside of Japan. So therefore, they can dump water that was poured over a nuclear meltdown that is lethal by the liter, just from the emissions, not from consuming it. How can you keep up with it? So, part of their reasoning is that the government of Akuma and Futaba, which co-host the number one plant, gave them the approval to discharge water that is long discharged into the ocean. First off, the government of Akuma and Futaba, there is no people in those communities. They're abandoned. There are nuclear wastelands where they're actually storing nuclear waste on top of that. It gets even worse. They actually took the 1-ton bags, several million of them, into the no-go zone, which is too radioactive to inhabit, cut the bags open, and are growing vegetables for sale there. In fact, they're allegedly taking water from the tank and growing fish in it that they're going to have for sale too, by the way, to convince the population that it's safe. When all of this is craziness as it gets, by the way. Japan's support for a nuclear restart is at its highest since Fukushima, says former energy executive director. First, we have no reports of that kind of that. And there was a poll a few months ago from the industry that suggested that a bigger percentage of the Japanese wanted it. Japan's support for a nuclear restart is at the highest since Fukushima disaster. Got the old chicken neck in a $5,000 suit. They cut your throat and drink your blood so quick. The U.S. is... Now, this is written by Luke Sweeney. Yeah, it's a doozy, all right. And look at the picture he shows, for goodness sakes. Because this is supposed to be Chernobyl. Like, you could actually have a camera work there, let alone have a human kneeling there. I covered this at the beginning of the nightmare. Everybody's freaking crazy. Nobody wants to deal with facts only. Everybody wants to give you propaganda. And you can't have a conversation with anybody because everybody's sucking on propaganda. So they took that picture there, darkened it, then stuffed him in there. I took the same thing. I took the picture, darkened it, stuffed me in there. Does that mean that he's actually there? No, of course not. Does it mean I'm actually in there plane with a reactor meltdown? No. Does that look like 200 tons of reactor core to anybody on the planet? Here, get some food from Japan. That'll fix everything. Or from around any nuclear power plant. Because we live in that world where stupid is encouraged, debate is scorned, a patriot is feared and scorned, but as his cause succeed, it causes little to join. Well, if I'm a patriot, we're in a shitload of trouble, ain't I? Because I ain't going to succeed in what I'm doing. But one man must try because nobody else seems to want to. After all, the fossil fuel industry kills and sickens millions of people every year. Well, first off, they don't. I'll bring up the original study that he's basing that propaganda upon, which was James Hansen, right? That got blown out of proportions. Thanks for bringing that up, Dad. Now you made a lot more work for me, you bastard. It's the story of Dana's life. So the original study, I'll show you how to go find it. It's stupid like everything else James Hansen ever touches, unfortunately. So if you go to James Hansen Wikipedia, scroll down till you get proposed solutions, you'll find that paragraph right there, talking about estimated 1.8 million air pollutions caused deaths were avoided because of nuclear between 1971 and 2009 through the use of nuclear power. So that works out to 64,285 a year. A year. Which is a far cry from the millions, right? And that started around 2016, that narrative. It just jumped. Because it fit their narratives, right? They needed to make the industry look like it had some redeeming qualities when it doesn't. And then he claims, let me go, I'm missing out. Nuclear power generation is booming in France and Germany. Germany closed down all but 3 of their reactors. France has half their fleet offline from corrosion and another 6 from the heat wave. They can't get enough water and it doesn't rain. He says coal plants spit more radioactive elements into the air in a day than the entire nuclear industry has in its lifetime. My God, man. He's a maniac, eh? Natural radiation emitters, we're already acclimated to it, and so are all the species through genetic superior selection. But claiming that now what he's trying to claim is nuclear plants have no emissions, see? All nuclear power plants are hemorrhaging radiation from their fuel pools because the reactor cores comes out and goes into a pool for a decade or more before it transfers to another common spent fuel pool. But it's hemorrhaging. Now, that was the theory, but they don't have a repository to put this stuff anywhere. And so they have decades and decades of reactor cores at each site that are still splitting the atoms, but there's no containment. It's an invisible snowstorm out of over 1,000 fuel pools that I can quantify no problem worldwide are hemorrhaging radiation into the environment 24 hours a day. And then as The Simpsons, which is a cartoon on TV, you're going to use that as part of their narrative. And commercial small modular reactors are a long way off, even though he played them up and then he finally admits that they're a long way away. But nuclear power generation in France and Germany is booming. This is absurdness. Right? This is absurdness to suggest that that is true. Right? Every facet of nuclear is based on deceit and dishonesty and deception. Genocide by proxy and omnicide Germany's U-turns on nuclear power. That's not true. Germany says it can't. It hasn't made up its mind. But all the media in the last 4 days have been reporting Germany's keeping the nuclear, which is only 3 lousy plants. USNCC students complete first nuclear engineering technology course. So that's just disappointing. More serial killers coming in the near future. The Korean Hyundai nuclear plant, I don't know what that is actually. This Korea's nuclear corporation. With the Chet Nuclear Power Organization. And what? It's going to take them 15 years if they start immediately to get the reactor up and running. 15 years. And then the technology for renewable now is accelerating. By from 2020 to 2026, there's around 4,800 gigawatts of renewables coming online. That's equal to 5,500 large nuclear power plants worth of renewables coming online in just that 6-year period by 2026. And that's more energy than all gas, oil, and coal nuclear combined worldwide. So, because the technology is doubling, right? And they're holding it back with everything they can find. They're scuttling, like Canada scuttled 700 wind farms in Ontario because they competed with 18 reactors in Ontario, right? Just gutted them last year. And then Bruce Power took $4 billion last year that was supposed to go to the renewable industry for storage. Bruce Power took it, and they're going to build a pumped hydro storage for a nuclear power plant that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with multiple reactors on site. So that the renewable industry couldn't have anything, because if the renewable industry had got that $4 billion for storage, for their renewable energy, for their wind and solar, that would have showed the world right away, see? Nuclear is in desperation mode because renewables by 2026 are going to be astonishing. And so signing these memorandums of understanding is holding up the planet, is destroying the future of all species. Northwest states, which is New Hampshire or Hanford, wants $3.7 billion per year from the feds for the nuclear waste cleanup each year. The waste treatment and mobilization plants, this is a $18 billion facility they're building at Hanford. Once they start it up, they can never go in the building again. If it breaks, they can't go in and fix it, in other words. They want $4 billion in annual federal funding to clean up the U.S. Department of Energy nuclear waste site in Hanford. Hanford's 585 square miles of nuclear wasteland. Costs continuing to rise at the former nuclear weapons production site. The Department of Energy's estimated cost for the Hanford to range from $300 billion to $640 billion, with active cleanup completed by 2078. Equaling annual funding levels between $5.3 billion and $11.4 billion to clean up that little speck site. So when you start putting them all together, you have no future. And 90% of the money goes to administration. That's why they can't accomplish nothing, right? 90% of the money is stolen and goes into administration, not actual physical work. If you work 8 hours at the Hanford site, by the way, anywhere in the last 100 years, you're entitled to a pension with just 8 hours working. So imagine if you worked there year after year, how sick you're going to end up getting in the future. They say that not providing funding will increase it over the long haul. Like when you're a thief, you always want more, right? So the nuclear waste decision for Canada's deep geological repository, aka hole in the ground, is delayed till 2024, that's typical of the non-regulatory agencies, right? And the Nuclear Waste Management Organization, I covered that this week heavily, is the industry itself. No other country does that, where the industry is told, go ahead and do whatever you want. Here's $28 billion. Have a nice day. I'm sorry, $26 billion. Susquehanna Nuclear to test emergency alerts Thursday. They're going to set off all their sirens. All 120 of them, I think, within 10 miles of the disease factory. If you live within the 10 miles of the disease factory, you should sell your property and get out of there. The officials say the public will also be alerted via local TV, radio, and cell phones. No way to hide away from them, eh? And testing all sirens in a nuclear wasteland 10-mile radioactive zone for 3 minutes straight. Oh, the Kids for Cash judges ordered to pay $200 million. That's the two in the front. So Kids for Cash, there's like 2,300 children they sent to jail for jaywalking, smoking in public, or 300 people in the lawsuit, but there's around 2,300. A scandal of epic proportion. What it shows you is the justice system is so capable of being co-opted by anybody out there. And so they were given $2.8 million to two judges to send children to a new detention center. The owners of it, a private detention center, gave two judges $2.8 million to send children their way. As young as 8 years old, sent to jail. First-time offenders deemed delinquent for petty theft, jaywalking, not going to school, smoking on school grounds, minor infractions. Ordered the delinquents, the victims, to be immediately shackled and handcuffed and taken away without giving them a chance to put up a defense or even say goodbye to their families. That's your justice system for you. They threw out 4,000 juvenile convictions involving 2,300 victims after the scheme was uncovered. It's just a miracle it was uncovered. 2,300 children with their lives destroyed, so a couple of guys can make $1.2 million. So the nuclear industry will take a tiny fraction of that to poison everybody in your community. That's what's happening, see? There's so many evil out there, even judges are just blatantly evil. Nuclear equipment firm unveils testing facility in the United Kingdom for making manipulators for the industry because you can't go near the nuclear material. But the only thing coming out of a nuclear meltdown, Dana, is tritium. A major step towards nuclear fusion. This this has to stop, right? This nuclear fusion propaganda we've been listening to for the last year and a half or so. It's absurd. The two breakthroughs, they had one last year where they had 150 million degree temperatures, and they produced enough energy, finally extra energy, to power a 9-volt battery. This is absurdness to suggest that they were able to extrapolate 9 volts from 150 million degree Fahrenheit temperatures. This year, they decided to top that one. They said that their 150 million degree Fahrenheit temperature was able to boil an extra 60 1-liter jugs of water. So how many jugs of water specifically did they boil at 150 million degrees that they were able to extrapolate that they had enough energy to burn an extra 60? And that was a major wow moment in the fusion industry. It was like just a few weeks ago. I'd like to meet one of these people and have them tell that to my face. This lot lies even more than the regular nuclear industry did. Their lie, I'll give them credit, their lies are entertaining. They extracted 60 jugs of water could boil in free energy out of the 150 million. How many jugs of water? I tried working it out on the calculator. I can't figure it out. Maybe I'm stupid. How many jugs of water can you boil at 150 million degrees again? They're the crazies, eh? James Lewis says you can't live in the dead tide pools. No, because you'll actually starve to death if you shipwreck on the coastline of Canada. And even you won't get nothing even going into the forest. Just starve to death. Over 20,000 British troops were present at atomic bombs tests at the end of the Second World War. This was a veteran described what it's like to feel a nuclear explosion up close. Right? That's the distraction. How much radiation did you consume? Did you breathe in, see? So they tell you this story. To lead you away from what you should be asking. How much radiation did you breathe? I don't care how hot it was, sir. I want to find out how sick they made you and see if we can help you. No offense. There's some good news for the scumbag nuclear industry. China reconnects nuclear reactor after shutdown, which was a year ago, due to damage. He said the damage is normal, though. Melted reactor fuel is normal, Dana. The fuel rod damage and a buildup of radioactive gases at the plant. No big deal, Dana. And he partnered with French nuclear firm Framatome, which is owned by the Japanese or the French government, EDF. I think it's like 16% or something of the Chinese site, which is bizarre, really. Used the European pressure reactor design, which they're now admit they got to redesign, of course, because they finally like when you build a reactor, you're supposed to run it and get the kinks out of it, then redesign it, and not just keep running it. This touted is offering a higher power and better safety, but the EPR project in Finland, France, and United Kingdom have been plagued by delays and cost overruns too. And they're going to have to totally redesign it, right? But why would you bother when you can have renewables and compressed air storage and pumped storage and stuff like that? Problem solved if you tried. There are more than 60,000 fuel rods in the reactor. I got no idea how big or heavy the fuel rods are. Japan's fuel rods were 12 feet long and 18 pounds. And they had 720 tons in a reactor, each of the reactors. Chernobyl was 200 tons, mostly graphite. They called the damage inevitable that it melted down. A year after it was shut down and repaired damage. It took them a year to repair the damage that they said was guaranteed to happen. So it's guaranteed to happen again, right? French energy giant EDF, the majority owner of Framatome, which is a spin-off from Areva, which went bankrupt so they didn't have to fulfill their obligations, which is actually owned by the French government, right? And they started up Framatome the very next day after they went insolvent with Areva. Areva was one of the systems that they had at the Fukushima for filtering water. They didn't even turn it on all the way up for 3 years after they said they did. In 2014, April, I think it was. The majority owner of Framatome also previously blamed the buildup of radioactive gases at the Taishan plant on deteriorating coating of some uranium fuel rods. Like the advanced fuel they're talking about that the media claims don't melt down, that's not true. The advanced fuel was meant to give them an extra 5 or 10 minutes before it melts down. That's all it was meant to do. You can't stop uranium plutonium from melting down. The official environmental monitoring data last year showed a slight increase in radiation in the community. But we're talking about China's official cover-up. Like, China's government is going to tell you the truth? Yeah, it was bad, man. There was radiation all over that community. They covered it up. That's not going to happen. EDF's water supply strategy for nuclear plants angers campaigners. Sizewell C. Let's see, we started off with a picture on this program tonight. I showed you a picture of Sizewell C. Surrounded by farms, of course. France, this is crazy. Look at this, folks. France's river, Loire, sets new low as the drought dries up its tributaries. It's like a desert, eh? There is no river. And they're going to build more reactors along this. The world is not pretending to be stupid. It's actually fucking stupid. And France leads the world in stupidness. Even 100 kilometers from where the Loire empties into the Atlantic Ocean, sandbanks now stretch as far as the eyes can see. Oh no, we're going to build a whole bunch of reactors, a whole new nuclear renaissance, Dana. For the river fish, the low waters are a disaster. The shallow water oxygen loses oxygen as it heats up, makes them easy prey for predators. Fish need water to live, and it has to be cool. Well, the fish might survive, but their eggs won't. It would be even lower if authorities did not release water from the dams. The dams that were built to guarantee cooling water to 4 nuclear plants where there's no cooling water. Losing one or more of the plants will push power prices higher Europe-wide. They already got half their fleet shut down from corrosion. That ain't going to open any time in the next couple of years. Zero possibility you're going to fix dry. Wow. Scientists can no longer replicate the self-sustaining nuclear fusion, which was where they powered a 9-volt battery. Enough energy to power a 9-volt battery. Now, they had to heat it up to 150 million degrees, so they had to burn an absurd, bizarre amount of energy to get 150 million degrees. And they produced enough extra energy that it was equal to a static electricity, basically. These are perpetual liars. This is all we cover this all the time. I don't think I've ever caught anybody in the nuclear industry telling the truth. If I did, I'd probably retire because it would shock me. After decades of I'm not yelling at obsolete optics earlier. I'm just saying I don't like that study because these people don't, right? They don't tell you the truth. They won't get money to do the study if they tell you the truth. The fact they produced the study means nothing. I got a rough voice, right? And I can fuck what anybody says. I just that I got a rough voice. And if I talk back to somebody, I'm not yelling at them, I'm talking to them, right? You can't talk to anybody because you must be yelling at them. It's not true. And then they're going to get their evidence from the Imperial College of London. Jerry Thomas, by the way, is at Imperial College of London. Robert Gale is at the Imperial College of London. These are like physical demons. There's no way the rest of them are not going to be like it. There's zero possibility. I had to suffer again. Should Japan shipping deadly radioactive food worldwide be considered crime? Should Japan shipping deadly food from a nuclear wasteland for over 11 years be considered a crime? Hang on, James. Give me a second. I'm struggling here. Oh, hang on. James is calling in. Here you go, James. Got you ready.
Yeah, so I had to go to the post office today and go through the parking lot. I realized somebody's calling my attention. I looked over and there's like this pop-up tent for the ASPCA. So they're I don't know if Canada's got a Canadian version of that, but
I think so, yeah.
They're an animal rights group.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm like, oh, this should be. So I came over there and I was talking to them. They're asking me questions, and I looked at them. I'm like, so what do you guys think of the Fukushima disaster? And they just, it's like deer in headlights, right? and so, you know, you get that sense of feeling that these people think I must be crazy. Like they've never heard anyone just out. You know what I mean? So I gingerly kind of just talked about how, you know, how they say on the radio that nuclear energy is green. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, do you realize that a nuclear power plant requires off-site power to run? And it's usually a gas, oil, or some kind of other plant. It's not a nuclear plant.
No, that's right.
It's something that's stable, right? That's making sure that there's... So if they hear this,
during the headlight, yeah.
And you see that transformation in someone for the first time when someone hears something that they've never heard before, but automatically it makes a lot of sense.
The wheels started clicking.
So one guy was saying to me, it's like, so it's like a fraud, right? Like,
yeah, that's right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
And I'm like, you know, do you realize what this has done to the Pacific Ocean? I mean, like the tide pools. And I mentioned I'm from California. It's funny because it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If you live in California at any point in time and you move all over the place around the world, you'll always tell strangers, yeah, I'm from California, because it's the best state.
It was magic. Yeah, it was magic. Yeah.
It's absolutely beautiful. I mean, and so when I explain to them that the tide pools, the work that Kevin's done and everything, they start to get kind of concerned, and so they're like really inquisitive. They're like, you know, I got to do some research on this, you know.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
And I'm like, listen, you know, just look, just get on YouTube and search for Dana Fukushima, and just
Yeah, we'll get him up to speed. Yeah.
You know, a daily show. I mean, he's like the only guy on the internet doing a live show every night, practically, and you'll get up to speed. He's just telling you what's going on. He's reviewing articles, and you know, and they were really perceptive about that. So it gave me some kind of hope. You know,
Yeah, no kidding.
You said
Yeah.
earlier, like, you know, you've got faith in humanity and all of that. That
true.
gives me hope too.
No, it does. When you finally get somebody that has an open mind, the truth makes sense all of a sudden, right? There is hope there. Yeah, thank you. No, appreciate it. Because we don't really get a lot of good stories. A lot of people get frustrated, right?
No, I know.
And
I know, and I just feel it's important to share because there just seems to be such a wake-up call to people when you explain to them that a nuclear power plant needs external power, and if that power is lost, it's the end of the world. Does that make any sense to you?
Right.
And no one has posed that question. It's like everyone just...
no. It's forbidden, just to admit that there's something... because that agenda, James, that's going on about carbon-free and emission-free, that's hardcore. Almost every story will go that route, right? It's very prevalent now when it's not supposed to be part of the reporting. That's injected in there on purpose, and it's very confusing. Yeah.
But also, I exactly now that this brought up too, the fact I'm like, you realize also that there has been no nuclear energy plant that's ever made a profit. They can't get private insurance.
Yeah.
They can't. No one will insure them, so it has to go on to taxpayers if there's ever an issue, and they got covered by that. And I bring that up. I tell them, like, think about that. If the insurance companies, they evaluate risk. They'll take risk. Insurance companies make a lot of money off risk, but they will.
They're not touching nuclear. There's zero. Yeah, it's always.
They're away from that.
That's good arguments for people to use, actually.
This to people for the first time how transfer again. It's interesting. I think, and those are the things that I think all of us on the chat group have been following you for so long. We need these strangers. All it takes for them to get their brain to unwind from all the propaganda. So letting them know, like, hey, nuclear power plant, how could they be green? How can they get around by saying they're green if they need external power?
That's right.
And that's not green. So what's going on here? And it's like, how come we don't learn about this in school? How come they don't teach us this? About, you know, and so I danced around a lot of the things, you know, where I didn't want to inundate. It's so easy to inundate people that just don't have any idea, you know.
Well, but, somebody has to do what you're doing, right? Somebody needs to say that stuff, and then when you see that people actually comprehend it, that's encouraging to say the least, isn't it? I do the same thing, James. I get mixed results, but
I thought them with the fact I'm like, listen, you know, you guys got to get brushed up. And they took your name down, and you know, if they follow up, they follow up. But there's a thirst out there for this content, and there's 30 people here on this entire platform that rakes in billions.
It's madness.
But maybe we'll break that paradigm, and I've got faith because I saw it today, and I just want to share that tonight.
Yeah, thank you, James. I appreciate it. That's encouraging, I think, for everybody that's listening. Thank you, my friend.
All right. Hey, take care.
Yeah, you too, James. Appreciate it. And so, that's a good lesson is that don't get discouraged when somebody rejects you, when you're having that conversation. The majority of the people, if you can approach them properly, because some people are enthusiastic and they don't know how to have a conversation, right? So that's a good little lesson for everybody. Every nuclear power plant needs 2 external plants, gas, oil, and coal, dedicated to build it, to run it for its lifespan, and for 60 more years, they got to keep these external power plants to decommission it. And then they call it carbon-free and emission-free. I think it's desperation, see? Because that's not really something to hang on to. But that's how propaganda works. And everybody says the same narrative. Most of it's coming from the lobbying group, right? So, looks like they lost my my control arm. It made it into the city, but it didn't make it out from the city. It should have been here 2 days ago. It didn't show up yesterday. Today, it's basically they're saying it's missing. And so I got to make a decision. We probably got to. Well, I can't do anything without the control arm, right? I can't tow the trailer, can't tow the boat. I was working on the boat tonight. I changed out the idler control valve. I took the one they sent me was the wrong one, and you won't take it back. And so I hacked it off and got it to got the plug to fit over it. It fits over where it's supposed to fit. It has the same gasket, but the plug-in was different, right? And so there's only two little pieces that slide in. They were the same. And so I butchered it, left a little stub there so it's something to hang on to, and I put duct tape on it to hold it into place so it can't back off, right? But it's a bit longer, so when I went to put the big piece on for the air exchanger, it barely fits. And so then I had a strip screw or a broken off bolt. I had to get that out, and end up just before I went live, I managed to get the little piece out, and I got to go find a longer bolt to put in. I don't know. I'm just trying my best to do what I can do, but I can't get my money back from the control arm until 2nd of September before they'll cancel and say it's actually disappeared. That means I got to wait another 2 weeks before they say that. Then it takes 5 days for the money to go back into my card. It's madness, right? So the return I'm waiting for now for the pressure, high pressure pressure washer that they wouldn't ship from Amazon. I got to wait 5 days for the money to go back on the card for that. And so if it doesn't show up, the other one doesn't show up, I'll take that money, I guess, with the money I got, and get a control arm locally, because it's cost a fortune. But we got to fix that so we can salvage the season, right? And because the ball joint on the truck is just terrifying. It rises up 1.5 inches. I don't know how it's staying there, right? If it lets go, the whole wheel flops over. So I can't tow the boat trailer with a ball joint like that. Who knows? They might have done that to me, but that's a bit of bad luck for me anyway, because they were supposed to show up on Tuesday. It didn't. It's Wednesdays, and it's still not there. Now it's MIA, right? And so then it's a lot of juggling, but we got to get the control arm and then worry about the pressure washer after. We need the pressure washer, but we need the ball joint, and we need to get out and do some research before the season is over, right? Because we got a mass die-off. And so tomorrow night, I'm going to cover the recent die-offs. I got a pretty big folder. And we got a folder left over from last year that we didn't cover at the end of last year. And we didn't cover the die-off from that stuff. I got to go through it, see what's there. It was a lot of really important stories in that one, right? So if I remember, tomorrow night we'll cover the mass die-offs. And then I got to close the poll in a bit. I'll do a shout-out. We raised Raised 37 Canadian from Kevin G last night. 25 from Patrick B, who's in the comments section, both of them. And Stephen Young sent us 50 today, which will help towards replace the ball joint that's missing, never showed up. So that's a huge deal. And just got to keep at it. I'm trying to get the boat ready so that when we get it fixed, we can just get the boat in the water, because we got a mass die-off. Thousands and thousands and thousands of seabirds dying down here. And a lot of the people are saying they're emaciated, by the way. The official story is the bird flu. That was the same for down in the States. There was a story came out last night about a big die-off, shearwaters, and there was 5 other species of birds. They were blaming that on the bird flu down in, I can't remember. And the story came out last night. All of them were emaciated. The bird flu was the cover story, right? And so we appreciate everybody that donated last night. Let me come and do a shout out. Cook Brains. Obsolete Optics. Hi, Obsolete. Don't put no shitty fucking studies in my chat room anymore, please. All you can do is make me upset. Unless you want to make me upset, go ahead. Timber Traveler, Dana Nasana. Did I fuck up the mic or something that time? It's okay, Patrick. Thank you, though. No, you're fine, man. Mic is touchy on my end, was it? Joseph. Good night, everybody. Richard, Starlight. I'll end the poll here after. Albert. Good night, everybody. A Thinker. CL Van Horn. There's a lot of work to type out your comments like that, I bet. That's hardcore, man. Blue Jay Outposts. Seen Blue Star Warrior won the other day. Starlight, Peaceware. James Lucid, who called. That was James who called in. What a great story for a change. Well, just because a lot of people, it's not very great stories, not saying. It's just unusual to get a good story, right? That's all. Chet Austin. Good night, everyone. I'll see everybody tomorrow night for the rock and roll show. There's 2 links at the bottom of the description you want to donate. Kevin Blanche. Hello, everybody. I'm just going up through the comments quickly. A quick shout out. I know Colette S. I seen last night. Run by. Yeah, tomorrow night we should cover the die-offs, because I got a lot going on there. I want to get it. Tell that story. There was 500 penguins washed up yesterday or the day before. They're trying to blame that on climate change, I think, or something. We'll cover it. They died of starvation. And then let me do this here. We have 53 votes. Should Japan shipping deadly food from a nuclear wasteland be considered a war against humanity? 98% said, yeah, it's absolutely evil. It is, right? It's unbelievably, inconceivably rather, monstrously evil. Robert, I'm going to go back up. Andrew B. Yeah, hi Joseph, thank you. I'm just double checking to see who I missed when I was going up to the names the first time. It's okay, obsolete. I'm not saying... I don't give a shit, man. It's all good. Who's texting me as the show's ending? Timber, a.k.a. Jay. Okay. Looks like we made it through, everybody. Yeah, to fill up the boat is $300 plus $300. Price of fuel has gone nuts, eh? It's not that I'm pissed, I'm passionate. There's a difference, right? I'm passionate about the truth. I'm passionate about the species. I'm passionate about the people. I'm passionate about a future. I'm passionate about a future. I desperately want the world to have a future. If you made it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. See everybody for the last show of the week is tomorrow night, because we start on Sunday, right? I would love to get the boat in the water tomorrow. I got the little Zodiac pumped up, and I got the cabin on it. And I got to stick the motors on it and get that into the water. I can't do anything until I fix the friggin' ball joint. And Amazon's a decent price. The local price, they're insane, but we're going to have to do it. We can't keep waiting, right? Well, you know, we still wait for another day or two, see if the post office finds it and delivers it. But history showed me if it doesn't show up when it's supposed to, if it doesn't show up the next day, it doesn't show up. And it's just torture, waiting to get out and do research. That's torture. Hugs for everybody. Have a great night, great day tomorrow. We'll see you all tomorrow night. Take care, folks.